Busy month. This time I decided to change a little bit of the format because I wanted you to see visually how how the system implementation is moving forward. Normally we do these Gantt charts, so we show what the numbers are on a per regional basis, but overall we're at 71%. So we're at the point right now where things actually seem like they're slowing down in terms of percentage, and yet in the field things are moving faster. So it's sort of a strange thing, and there's a lot of different things that happen in here that have to do with paperwork and approvals and other things that don't necessarily stop the implementation process, but there's just extra steps that we have to take. But the fact that we're at 71% here is actually pretty good. And what I want to do is show you where we are right now in terms of the system layout. So we've seen maps of this before. It changes on a regular basis based on what we've done with sites and whatnot. But overall, this is sort of a snapshot of what the design looks like today. So the point I wanted you to see is all these green dots here indicates tons of movement throughout the site. So you can see the solid green circles are the sites that have been completed, and that's plenty throughout the state. And then you see the little dotted sites that right now are rotating. Those indicates that those are sites that are active. We have crews in the sites. They're either drilling, they're pouring concrete, or they're assembling towers. So definitely a lot of activity right now. And then the last category I have here is the little square boxes with T's, which move there a little bit to draw attention to them. And the reason we have those there is because these are sites in which we have ordered the towers. That means that we completed the regulatory process. We have all the permits in place, so we're good to order the towers, and it takes time to order the towers. In the meantime, what happens is that every site that has, that's active, which we show with the motion right now, once the activity ends there, for example, a drill rig, once they complete in one site, then they can start moving over to these sites where we've ordered the towers for. So now it's just a matter of sharing resources and moving these things around in order to get ready so when the towers do come into town, we have them ready. Part of that process is as the towers get built, because every tower, this is not something that is, they just pull from the warehouse, they have a stock of towers and they just go ahead and ship those. Every tower is built to meet the specific, our specifications to meet how the site was designed. That means the thickness of the tower, the spread of the legs of the tower, every single piece is specific to how that particular tower is designed. So when that's designed, the tower manufacturer actually sends us these, it's like a template that's used to mark where the bolts go into the concrete and the footings. So all of that stuff is part of, we need to get those bolts in so that when we do the drilling, the concrete has to go in the same day the drilling in, and then we put these they're about 4 or 5 feet tall, really thick bolts that hold the tower structure in place. So it's really a big puzzle. We're always trying to get everything to fit together. A lot of times, there's something happens over here. So when we're planning to be in this site, we have to move the resources over here because something else happened over here. So it's a constant juggling of resources. But most importantly, when you look at the map, there's plenty of green in there, right? You see, now you can start to see where the 71% is a significant number. The other side to that,
Melvin,
yes.
what does the white represent? The white circles.
I'll be getting there.
Okay.
So because we track these things internally and we have colors and whatnot. So this layer that I'm putting here kind of covers that so we can focus on this, but we have some other things and I'll be able to explain some of that. All right, so on the lower hand on the screen, we have another category of sites here. So the first one is the regulatories. So when you look at the map, I'm having them pop up there right now. What that means is that these are sites, and they've covered some of the white dots, right? but these are sites that are in the regulatory process. That means that we're dealing with the environmental studies, with the historic studies, the FA determination of no hazard, meaning that we don't have any issues with airplanes. So all that stuff is in the queue. And so we're anticipating, and meaning it's sort of an educated guess where we think this is going to fall, right? Based on the feedback that we get and whatnot. So these sites are so far good, and we're waiting to get, in essence, the final certification that we have the green light to proceed. Once we pass those, then we go ahead and order the towers for those, right? Then we start dealing with what the plans for getting the crews into sites to start deepening dealing with the foundations and whatnot. So there's certain things that we can do, certain things we can't do, because, for example, if we go ahead and order the towers without completing the regulatory might fail, right? And then we end up with a tower that then we'd have to try to figure out where that tower would fit. And a lot of these towers are pretty unique to the needs of that particular site. All right, in addition to that, we have these square ones with the L's in them. Those are sites that are leased. So right now we're looking at potentially 6 lease sites throughout the state. Again, we have these lined up. We've been working with the tower company and understanding what we can place there. So we've done some preliminary studies about what it would take to put our equipment at the towers. The important thing here is that the tower exists. So it allows us to accelerate the deployment of those sites so we don't have to go through a 6 to 9 months process with the regulatories, right? But so we're basically renting the vertical asset. We're still providing a generator and a shelter and other equipment on your own enclosed shelter. The other category here is these red triangles. These represent a category of sites that's unique. These are owned by Iowa Public Television. These sites, we've looked at several, but these are the ones that seem to fit well with the design, and these are the ones that we're going with. We haven't started those either. And then the last one are the DNR sites. We have 3 of those. Again, we haven't started. So everything that's on the left are sites that we haven't started doing any work in yet for different types of reasons. Everything that's on the right side are the sites that we're working on right now. So there's lots of green. There's yellow in there, but it's not as much as the green. All right. The only thing I want to point out here is you see the question mark here for, hopefully you see my cursor, this area here. So this is a DNR site that we're working with, and we had a backup plan. So if that site wasn't approved, we would go to the leased site over here. If that site gets approved, then we can switch over to the original plan, which was to use this site, and then these paths will change in the design.
Where does that link go to then?
This would go from Norwalk to, I think this is Lucas. Okay. So as an example, again, when we talk about the domino effect when we work with sites, the original plan was to have this site linked to the DNR site linked to the Marion County site. But because this is a slow, long process, if we waited for this to be resolved, then we would never build this one in time. So we changed the path configuration in order to keep on moving forward. All right, so when we look at the current activities, we've been working now downtown right now with one of the sites that was critical for the NGA. So we're in the process of, we had to shut the site down because there's some work happening at the rooftop. So we reconfigured the site, and we're going to be bringing that up back in the air pretty soon once all the roof work takes place and it's completed. again, just some coordination to make sure that the guys that were using that particular site know that it's no longer available for a short period of time, so folks had to revert back to their legacy systems. So we do have more civil site completion certifications in process, so it's just a continuation as we build and we keep on going through that process. Lots of driving. The microwave installations, again, it's as the sites become done, then we start scheduling the crews to start doing the sites. We try to keep them as pairs so that when the crew goes out to install the dishes, they're dealing with both sides of a path. So site A and site B, if they go this way, we try to set it up so that when the crews go, they go in pairs, they actually work with those two sites. So it saves time and money. We're still working on power to the sites. There's a lot of sites and everybody, it's not one power company, so everybody's needs are different. So we're still running through that process right now. So the point I want to bring here is that we're still dealing with some of the internal state processes before we can continue to build with the IPTV and the DNR tower sites. So right now, that process has been slow, so right now those sites are in the critical path. The saving grace for IPTV is that we can bypass some of the regulatories. DNR, I think 1 out of the 3 can be bypassed, but because we're right now pretty much almost in the middle of October, these are becoming the ones that stay on the critical path. And then in addition, we're waiting for the final approval by a local board, which would be the one that I showed with the question mark on it. That's also part of the critical path because it's pretty late in the game, and that we have to go through the full regulatory process. So right now we're looking at 7 sites that are part of the critical path. So as I mentioned before, all the lease sites have been identified and they're ready to go. We've been waiting to hit the trigger just in case there's any other shifting that happens, right? Because once we enter that lease agreement, we're kind of locked in there. So we want to make sure not to hit go until we secured everything, because in a system like this, a site change has a domino effect, and we want to make sure that we're somewhat protected. That's all I had. Any questions?
You intend putting these, I know we've discussed, are you going to turn them on for site trunking or?
Yes, so right now, we're coming up together with a plan. We're trying to figure out which ones are the higher priority sites. So we have a couple of sites that we're working on, and we have Waterloo. We're looking at the southwestern side of the state, which is Glenview and
Glenwood?
Yes, good, yes. So there's a couple of them. Story County, want to fire that one up as well as soon as we're done with that one. So they're becoming available, and so we're kind of shifting resources, and I'm trying to bring in more STs into the area so that we can start focusing on having folks that can turn on the tower sites and have them site trunking, and then having the core team that focuses on all those things that are very unique to the state of Iowa. So we want to make sure that we ration our resources correctly to keep the expertise where they need to be.
So for the board's benefit, for those that don't know what site trunking means, what is that so that the user, let's just say we tell Brainerd County your tower is active, and just to let you know it's in site trunking. What does that tell him?
So what that means is, let me see if I can go back to this map, and I'll show this one as an example here. So if I was to say, you know, this particular site up here has been built and ready to go, there's not a site over here. We ordered the steel for it. This one isn't done. This one isn't done. But this site itself is actually built. The equipment is there. We have power in it. So we can turn that site on. And so what site trunking does is that it keeps the site as an island. So if we turn on all the sites without having finished the microwave, then every site represents an island. So everybody who's talking to that site can talk to each other, but if they try to talk to somebody who's connected to a different site, they can't reach because there's no connection in between. So part of this process is to make sure that we turn on the radio sites on first, and then we start focusing on interconnecting them. And as we interconnect them, then the layer 3 portion of the network starts taking over and starts seeing all the active sites and starts to build the connections between them. So in that sense, when it goes to site trunking, folks could use that to try it out and have sort of an idea, but you don't have the full experience because in some of these cases, you might only experience the coverage that comes from that site, but not the ones that come from the adjacent sites because they haven't been built yet or they're not fired up yet. So it can be misleading, but it's just one of those learning experiences.
Will you go forward to where you've got all the, like the DNR shows up and everything, so I can take a picture of that, please?
So Melvin, now that you've dazzled us with your map, you still have some white circles on there that I'd like to know what they are.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Can you make them blink and turn?
So these white circles, these are counties that have decided to purchase their what we call local enhancements. So they're going to they're purchasing additional sites. So it's their sites, it's their spectrums, it's their channels, right? It's their infrastructure, and so they experience the savings of the core, so they don't have to buy a core, and so in some cases, some of these. Will have already a site that happens to be in, right? So they have, for example, a cost saving. If they wanted 5 sites, but there's already one in there, they only have to purchase 4, right? So, for example, down here, Page has decided to join and purchase their own, set up their own sites down here, right? This is so small. I think this is Mills County. Down here, same situation here. We have Boone County, and I think that's Wright County. So that's what those white. We keep them here. I don't track them in terms of them being built or not because it's really not part of the project. But I keep them here just to be aware because sometimes we're actually competing over resources to do some of this work, right? So there is some level of coordination sometimes required to make sure that we stay on track.
Melvin, one thing that I'll pass on to you about the site trunking and allowing people to preview what the network might look like in their area as these towers come online, that is one of the biggest requests that I've encountered from my visits with county stakeholders and dispatch centers. They want to see what that footprint might look like as quick as possible. So your efforts are certainly appreciated there. So I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that.
Yes. I can say that a 2.5-year schedule is extremely aggressive for statewide implementation. Again, for me, it's unique to Iowa. Usually, this can be a 5-year implementation timeline because there's lots of hurdles to overcome. So we're doing a lot of stuff in parallel. I'm pretty sure you guys remember the presentations where we've done a lot of stuff, not waiting for other things to clear, just so that we can keep the train moving. So it's very aggressive. The interesting thing is that it's very aggressive. We got lots of teams, a lot of work happening. When it starts to become real, then it doesn't matter. It's not fast enough, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Melvin, in Region 5, the Southeast Iowa region, I know there's a lot of our partners down there are in the wait-and-see mode. How's this going to work? And so they're very anxious to be able to be given a portable radio because that's the big thing is, yes, we can get a lot of mobile coverage, but our portable coverage, what are we going to get? Mm-hmm. So those partners down here in Southeast Iowa are really anxious to be able to be given a radio to go out in their schools or their where they have a concern for in-building coverage to be able to get that. So seeing some of these go solid green with a black circle around it is encouraging that we can start testing and see what's how this end product's going to be.
Correct. I agree. Right now, the biggest push is we're trying to get, before the winter sets in, we're trying to get all the concrete in as fast as we can with the drilling rigs and all the forming and all that stuff before it snows. Because then the stacking of the tower can be done, dropping off the shelters, which we have at the warehouse, can be done. It's just, right now, the whole focus is drilling and pouring concrete. And some of these holes, one of our learning experiences with Iowa is that the terrain is soft. So some of these holes end up being a lot deeper than anybody had anticipated. So we're talking some cases, normally we would have thought 25 feet. In some cases, we're talking 60 feet deep and 8 feet wide in diameter. I mean, these are huge, huge. Any other questions?
Okay.